Welcome to Use the Fours, a Smash Up podcast. I'm AndIQuote, and today we will be continuing our discussion of B tier. Once again, I'm joined by Sonus and Berryl. Let's get right on into it. Welcome back, gentlemen. We are going to cover our next 8 B tier factions today. And let's go ahead and just jump right into it. We'll start with number 84, which is the Anansi Tales. Who wants to talk about Anansi Tales?
Anansi is an interesting situation because for a while they were known as extremely good. I'm not exactly sure why it changed. Maybe the meta got super focused on removal, and that weakness where they only have one opponent to give cards to really started to shine through, I think. Because in 3-player, it's like they're basically S tier purely for not having that weakness. So it plays a big part here, I would say.
And to elaborate on that, Sonus, when you say only one player to give cards to, like I know in 3-player, you can give cards to whichever player is not in the lead. So you can kind of help and poke and prod other players and kind of distribute it the way you want instead of giving all your cards to just one other player, correct?
Exactly, yeah. So like in 2-player, if I have this card I want to give away, I have just that one opponent, and if they can use that card to help them, that can hurt me. But yeah, in 3-player, I give it to the weakest opponent. Won't matter if they use it because they're the weakest at the moment, basically. Or I can even give them a card that they can use to then hurt the opponent that's threatening me the most. Like I've done that with Elder Things, given Touch of Madness to the weakest opponent. So
can't do that anymore, I suppose. But
yeah, true.
Something to note there is that Anansi doesn't have any antagonistic cards of its own, and I think that might be part of the meta shift where Anansi dropped off a lot, because a few years ago, maybe, the fact that they had so much draw and they had passable burst capabilities meant that was all we were really focusing on. But in the past couple of years, we've really realized that control is really valuable. And Anansi not having traditional control, like ability to control what's on the board, has probably played a big part in why they've dropped this low.
Well, and I also think Anansi Tales is one of Bandit's favorite factions, or at least he was very enthusiastic about them when they first were released. And, you saw them paired with things like Minions of Cthulhu or Elder Things, where they can give away madness. And in that context, they're extremely powerful.
Yes.
But yeah, with what Sonus has said, with what Berryl said, and just the constraints they face in 2-player, they have a lot more difficulty accomplishing their game plan in a way that also doesn't backfire on them in a major way a lot of times.
Agreed.
But let's talk about what they're really good at. Why would you pick Anansi Tales in the first place? You give cards away, we've established that, and you can stuff your opponent's hands with cards, and that's not traditional antagonism, like we've said. You can shrink their hand size, because if they discard your cards or play your cards, you have bonuses you can get from them doing that. But why do people primarily pick Anansi Tales?
I mean, as I alluded to earlier, they've got really strong draw, and on top of that, they've got really strong action searching capabilities, especially for standard actions with Anansi, the Spider, their leader, and the Perfect Gift. Both of which grab any standard action from your deck at the cost of, giving it to another player. And I think those are probably their main value propositions at this point in the game's life. The hand attacking is kind of secondary almost at this point.
For sure.
Right.
And one thing with that kind of circumvents in the only having one opponent to give away things to is picking a partner where the opponent can't even use the cards anyway. So Thieves is a good example. You give them a card where they have to discard a card they don't own, and the opponent only has cards they own, so they're either forced to hold it, and then you can collecting stories.
Well, that's a bit of a double-edged sword, because cards that Anansi gives away are themselves cards that player doesn't own, right? So you gotta be a little careful.
Yeah, you can't stack it too much.
In that matchup, I think I favor Anansi slightly more than Thieves, but
because you're still playing and or discarding cards that Anansi owns, and therefore you can do your Hornets, whatever.
Right. I do think, to that point though, Time Travelers is right at the top of their partners list, because Anansi can do crazy things like play Time Walk 7 or 8 times in a turn, I believe. I think Ludicrousness could get it to 8. Hypothetically. I can't remember exactly the sequence that you need to do to accomplish that. But yeah, certain Uber cards, they can just exploit so much with Anansi Tales because of the Perfect Gift and Anansi the Spider. Then you have Thieves up here as well. Minions of Cthulhu is a classic. Superheroes solves the issue that Anansi runs into, where if they don't see Anansi the Spider, they tend to struggle a lot because he is so important as a support for them. Ignobles Anansi is a real brain burner of a combo. World Champs is on here because at one point Anansi was the leader of the World Champs, and it was really, really strong. So if he has a bunch of standard actions to sling, that he can accomplish a whole lot. But yeah, overall, if you're really into mind games like Bandit is, this faction has a whole lot of appeal to it, even in 2-player. But if you can't predict how your opponent is going to respond when you hand them cards, or you give them cards that benefit them more than they benefit you, you're kind of up a creek with the Nazi Tales.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think one cool thing to do with them with the standard action searching is specifically picking actions that give you another action play. That ends up being a pretty strong option for them.
True. Very true.
And I guess on another weakness side is one of their 4-power minions is not especially helpful. And I've been learning in 2-player, having a not useful elite minion is actually a pretty big detriment.
I mean, Onini got a lot better last year with the print-on-demand stuff.
Onini got a little bit better.
A little, I would think.
Osibo is really the big selling point here. Anansi and Osibo are, the faction depends so much on those 2 minions specifically. And you've got Akaye the Turtle, and he's great. He's in World Champs. We've already talked a little bit about him. Anansi has 3 copies of him, so lots of draw. But yeah, because they're such an unconventional faction, they have some very unconventional counters as well. We're not going to see mad scientists and Russian fairy tales and extramorphs very often as counters, but any faction that can put cards back in their deck, like these factions can, just ruin Anansi's day. Because they're like, oh, okay, more fuel for the fire, and they put it back into their deck, and Anansi may never see those cards again. Very interesting faction, very interesting gameplay style. It just doesn't always pan out as well as you would hope. Any other thoughts on Anansi Tales before we proceed?
They're one of those factions that I'm very glad they exist.
Oh, yes, for sure.
But they're not the strongest, and that's okay.
Yeah.
They're one of my favorites when I play them in 3-player. That's
I can see that.
Yeah.
the other thing.
Totally.
Yeah. Someday well do a 3-player tier list, and Sonus can
Yeah.
catch us up on all these low-tier
geez.
factions that are top tier in 3-player. Okay. Well, let's proceed on then to number 83, which is Aladdin, our second Disney faction, and also one that probably people are going to be surprised to see down here. Someone talk to me about Aladdin.
Yeah, Aladdin is actually kind of a similar situation to Anansi, at least as to why they're down here. It's another faction with very good action access, albeit in a different form. They've also got very powerful things they can do with the wishes and the genie. And we see on the slide the repeatable movement with the carpet is very valuable. But they also have a lot of the same weaknesses as Anansi, with no protection, no antagonism. I don't think Anansi has protection either. But yeah, they'll have either those things, which have become very important in recent years. And on top of that, they've got a lot of dead cards. Like the wishes are useless without Genie. That's why they have so much access for Genie. But they don't have any protection for Genie. So even as something as simple as a Seeing Stars can just take him out. And then he's gone, and you got to get him back eventually. And that could be a very painful process to get him back. And then a lot of their effects cost actions to discard, and like with Beauty and the Beast we saw last time, those discard costs add up real quick, especially since you can only discard on average half of the cards you draw.
I was just going to say one thing with Aladdin, a personal opinion is they're possibly underrated, but just need more proof. But when they high roll, it seems like extremely strong.
Oh yeah, they've got a very
you
high
get
ceiling.
wishes in the right timing, with Genie in the right timing. They're getting all the actions they want, and then it just feels so powerful sometimes. It's sad it just seems to not be consistent.
Yeah.
But
Well, that's why they're in B tier, because when they roll high, when you get all 3 wishes and Genie at the exact right times that you need them, if they can play all 3 wishes in a game, chances are they're going to win.
Probably.
yeah,
The reality of the situation, though, is sometimes all you draw are Palace Guards and Rasha. And you cry because I like Palace Guard, but they are not going to be winning you games on their own. But yeah, I think that the lack of protection definitely matters for them more than even Anansi, because Anansi is 5 power. He's harder to hit anyway. Genie is 3 power.
Yeah.
For a long time during testing, Genie was 4 power, and I have always maintained that they were much more potent when he was, because he was that much harder to remove.
Makes sense.
Within the Disney faction, he's easily removed by the hyenas from Lion King, Dragon Cannon from Mulan, and of course, not to mention the litany of destruction of power 3 or less that's available in the rest of the game. But yes, certainly, if they line up their cards correctly, as is often the case, and will continue to be the case for factions of B tier, they can go nuts.
Yeah.
Knights of the Round Table, or Arabian Nights, as Bandit would say. Classic, super scary combo. I've won at least 1 or 2 games with Arabian Nights, and
I beat Bandit with it.
played maybe one wish, no wishes, just because there's so much there to work with. Their other partners really emphasize getting Genie out or being able to repeat actions.
You can see Killer Plants on that slide there.
Yeah. Counters, very traditional as far as like Tricksters and Super Spies, the usual. Vikings can really hurt Aladdin because they can steal Genie, and then you have 3 dead cards until you get Genie back. The Nightmare Before Christmas, their below average power means that Aladdin and Jasmine are the only minions that aren't blocked by ghostly presence. And then 80 Critters is on this list for much the same reason. You can Critter Cube Genie, and then he's just gone. And you're up a creek without a paddle unless you've already used your wishes. Someday when Smash Up is complete and there are no more factions to release, I'm sure we will get into the history of Aladdin. It's very fascinating, but this is the Aladdin we have, so it's what we make do with. Any other thoughts about Aladdin before we proceed?
Yeah, I think for me, I mean, just to really like push it is like if your partner faction is desperate for their actions, Aladdin will feel good to you. They one of the best to just getting to actions, and so it can't be understated. Yeah, it feels a little different than Anansi because it's not just standard actions, but yeah, concept's similar. And another thing is Street Rat the potential of that card is crazy, and somehow it's not talked about enough. Maybe people just aren't playing Aladdin enough.
Yeah, I even forgot to put it in the strengths column. But yes, Street Rat. Play an action from your opponent's discard pile. There's a lot of potential there. I've seen Street Rat do some very crazy things over the years. But yeah, their action pull is great. They have better recursion for actions than the Nazi does, because they can either play them or, well, not play them, but they can put them back in your hand or on top of your deck, as opposed to just shuffling them in. So if you like Sonus said, if your partner really wants specific actions and wants to play them a lot, Aladdin can do that for you.
And another thing I like is they do fit into a few different synergies, not just when you're hunting for action. They have good discard partner synergy, of course. Not just because they have some cards that want to discard, but just Wish is such a free discard a lot of the times. So
that's right, because Genie can just grab it back. I mean, that's if you've got Wishes and you don't have Genie yet, they're perfect discard fodder.
And even when you do have Genie, like Genie can pull one back for each turn. It's a free discard cost if you're not planning to use the Wish.
Yeah.
That's true. All right. Well, let's move on to number 82, which is Goblins. I think a lot of people don't know what to make of Goblins.
I think they're kind of in a similar situation to Sheep, where the thing they do is so weird and kind of out there that people have kind of been afraid to touch them for a long time, just because their effects are, as we can see in the weaknesses column, they literally come down to coin flips. And even though they have a lot of ways to control the coin flips, I think kind of like both mentioned Sheep with the copying and Penguins, which we haven't seen yet with the plays off the top, I think people are just a little afraid to touch them just because of the high variance.
Yeah, at least the theoretical high variance. One of their other weaknesses is that they have ways to control the flips or manage however the flip goes. 2 Diviners, Goblin Recruiters, they're 2 Make Your Own Lucks. I mean, they have ways to kind of make the coin flip just pointless, basically. You basically pick the result you want, but yeah, outside of those specific cards, you're rolling the die every time you want to try to do something. They've got very powerful effects, and if you can manipulate and control those effects and keep your Diviners in play, which is very possible with Goblin Recruiters, just constantly shuffling cards back into your deck, Goblins can be a force to be reckoned with. Their uncapped destruction card, Bushwhacked. Move a minion or destroy a minion. Heads or tails?
It's always uncapped removal from a base. If you just need the minion gone, Bushwhacking does that guarantee.
Yeah, but yeah, they've got tons of draw potential. I mean, I can't emphasize how much they rely on seeing and keeping Goblin Recruiters out in play. And Chaos Lord, by extension, because he's also a source of draw for them, they can burn through a deck very quickly, and they have some crazy power output potential. I mean, theoretically, if you flip perfectly, they could get infinite power with He Who Smelt It. Now, that's never going to happen, because, I mean, even goblins with all their coin flip control can only do that 4 times, but...
Honestly, I think he Who Smelt It is one of the worst places to use your make your own lucks, for example, to get more value out of that. I think you're much better served using it on something like a bushwhacking or a demolition.
Well, it depends. I've used He Who Smelt It many times to end the game, and I needed to get the exact flips I needed. But yeah, their big appeal as partners, I feel like, and perhaps y'all will agree with this, I feel like they're very support heavy. They don't look like it, but with their draw and with their recursion and with their power that they provide, you give them a partner that, I know, granted, most partners like all those things, but which makes them a better partner perhaps than people realize. I mean, there's a variety of factions they go well with, and I've tried to capture some of those there in the partners list. A variety of different play styles, a variety of different archetypes. Dragon Goblins, I think that's a Sonus combination.
Yeah, I love that combo.
And then All-Star Goblins is insane. All-Stars, we'll get to them eventually. They've fallen slightly from the heights we used to consider them at, but one of their weaknesses is that eventually they run out of steam, and
Goblins fix that.
They got it. They have a few good cards, and once they burn through those, they don't have much left to work with. Goblins can just keep putting those cards back in their deck with Goblin Recruiters, and I've seen I think some of the most absurd plays I've ever seen have been with All-Star Goblins. But yeah, someone else talk about Goblins besides me.
Well, Goblins for me are interesting because sometimes I feel like the most broken faction in the game, and then other times you're just completely uncomfortable, and I think that's stopping people from playing them, is they don't like feeling uncomfortable and not knowing what's going to happen and things like that. But I think we've been talking about it recently, and you just touched on it. I think trying to pick them as your support, where you have a headliner you can rely on, because if you pick goblins in that position, you almost don't care too much about what happens because every result is good. But if you don't need to rely on the results in a headlining way, it won't sting as bad. But when they work out to help your headliner, it's going to feel extremely powerful. But when they don't, you at least have a headliner partner still pushing through bases, and then goblins throwing you in some draw here, some power counters there, some destruction there, with the occasional giant play that helps the headliner. At least that's the theory currently. That seems to be tested soon.
We haven't touched on Blaster, their 3-power minion, who can keep it's like a pseudo first mate in a lot of ways. It can keep itself in play, and so they can persist a lot of power, they can drop a lot of power very suddenly. They are perhaps the purest form of what B tier is all about, which is you need the exact right cards in the exact right order. I mean, they double down on the random elements of all that. So
Blaster's one of the main reasons I picked them. It's my favorite way to play them is the first mate style, and there's plenty of partners that help with it. Anything that just makes a Blaster bigger, or if you have other things like Blaster, like with pirates and whatnot, you can just really pull off some crazy fun stuff.
Right. Now, Goblin Pirates is scary.
We talked about those as pirates.
Yeah.
All right. Any other thoughts about goblins before we move on to number 81?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if goblins do move up a little bit, maybe even more than a little bit in the future. Just because as control becomes, like, there are more viable control factions, like with the rebalances. I think goblins like the pace of the game slowing down a little bit, giving them just a little bit more time to find their key cards and then take advantage of them. And because think about this, their key cards are Chaos Lord, Diviner, and Goblin Recruiters. So it's their big minions, which are harder to control, and a base modifier, which not everybody has the ability to take out.
Yeah,
I agree. They'll probably go up if people try them more in different ways.
Yeah, there are fewer disenchant style cards now in the game than there were before, even thanks to some of the reworks. So yeah, unless you can get rid of base modifiers and you park Goblin Recruiters on a base that no one cares about, that they will do quite well. All right, well, let's move on to number 81, which is the Cyborg Apes. And this is another one that longtime fans of the game may be surprised to see them down here in the low 80s. I'm not as surprised. I mean, and perhaps y'all aren't either. I mean, even as recently as a few years ago when Neligend was doing his S-tier tournament, he concluded that cyborg apes were probably B tier.
Yep.
So let's talk about cyborg apes. Who wants to start that conversation?
I still have picked them in the last two tournaments. I've picked them, league tournaments. And they have a couple things going for them still, which is one, shielding, and it's listed there. If you need to protect your minions from actions, it's just like super reliable one. They tend to always run into it with the way they can draw and get through their deck for actions. And another thing is, in some drafts, they're just extremely scary because they're one of the only factions I've ever seen or done a triple score with that wasn't pirates. So there's a lot of partners where you just make this giant flying monkey and you just win. But when one of those partners isn't in the draft and you don't specifically need action protection, that's kind of where they end up sitting down here in B tier. And you can't rely on those drafts being the case. So
right, they're a very specific type of partner, and as such, they have very specific counters and very specific weaknesses that a lot of factions can exploit. Because when you're building your juiced up flying monkey, that's potentially a lot of power you can leave out. Because unless you're just dumping actions on a baboon, which their whole deal, their 3-power minion can play actions on themselves as extra actions. There's a slow build up with apes, and a canny opponent will use any power you leave sitting out against you. So, Cyber Evolution, I believe that's the +3 modifier that they've got.
Yes.
It's hard to lead with that sometimes. Shielding is really your best bet to lead with, because then you've got about as low a footprint as you can. But a lot of times they don't have that, or you don't want to play shielding on a particular minion to start with. Shielding's interesting too because you can use it offensively. You can play it on someone else's minion and they lock it down.
And that's really rare.
Yeah, it's rare, but it's not unheard of.
yeah.
No.
And it's nice that they have a destruction card too, so it actually comes in handy all the time. So that's another nice thing.
Yeah, they are kind of slow to build up, but they do have monkey on your back who can stall. And I think it goes to the bottom of your deck because they didn't want Cyberback to be able to recur it. That
doesn't make sense to me because you're playing it on Cyberback.
Right.
Yeah.
Cyberback.
Yeah, Cyberback is super scary. It's late in the game when he can just, every action you've played already, he can just pull them back into play on himself. You can do another juiced up flying monkey with him if you need to. And especially if you have a partner who gives you extra actions, you can very suddenly blow up 2 bases, and then Cyberback enters play. You dump a bunch of actions on him. You blow up 2 more bases,
and that wins you the game.
Yeah. That's at least 4 bases won right there, in very short order. So as far as their weaknesses go, I mean, we've talked about their big power footprint they tend to leave out. We've talked about, of course, the usual B tier issues of needing a lot of pieces in the right order and in the right place at the right time. Their 2-power minion, Furious George. I think Furious George is kind of counterintuitive to the rest of the faction. He suggests playing the faction in a way that they actually don't want to be played. Do you guys know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I think you're talking about they want to stack modifiers on that particular minion.
Yes.
When the other minions are so much easier to stack the modifiers on. Like Baboon gives you free modifier plays on itself. Cyberback lets you play modifiers from the discard on itself, and none of that leads into Furious George.
Right. Furious George's ability is cool. +1 for each modifier on it, but it's 2 power for starters. And there, like we've said, there are so many better targets to play your actions on than Furious George. So
especially with juiced up.
Yeah. A lot of times, Furious George ends up getting discarded for me. I don't ever play it in a lot of cases, unless there's always the poor man's second where you play Furious George and then the shielding just so you can have presence. I mean that's an option, but he's not a very exciting 2-power minion.
Furious George is probably the single reason they aren't higher on the tier list, to be honest. You're a 4-copy minion that you just don't want that often actually is pretty painful, because they have if you just look at their list of cards, they actually have a lot. Pretty much every card is good except Furious George, and it's 4 copies. So
right,
yeah, that 2-power minion is so important because it's the most common card in your deck.
Yeah. As far as partners go, obviously they love other minion modifier factions. Fairies are a great partner for them. Fairies also ruthlessly counter them.
And Russian.
Yeah. Russian fairy tales, fairies, Vikings, Nightmare. You've got Dr. Finkelstein who can just yank your modifiers away one piece at a time. Grannies. I mean, in the Grannies art, we have Knitting Circle. In Wrappings, Cyberback. That art is that way for a reason. Grannies can murder your setup with unless you've got double shielding on a minion. Thieves can snatch your modifiers directly off of your minions too.
I don't think Knitting Circle does protect from get stopped by shielding, because it's destroying the actions, and removing the actions doesn't count.
Well, shielding protects your minion and the other actions on your minion. So if you've got two shieldings together, they protect each other.
Yes, you've got two shieldings, then yes, both actions are protected. Yes.
But yeah, they like we've said, they love extra action plays. Nightmare Before Christmas is lots of minion modifier specific extra action plays. There's the old Juiced Up Flying Monkey, Clyde 2.0 to put those back in your hand, and then Lock, Stock, and Barrel to play Flying Monkey again, and you score a third base with them that way.
Couple notes too is in Bandits last, was it Crucible? What was it called? Gauntlet. They took second with Musketeers.
March Smashness. Cyborg Gate Musketeers.
They got second.
They got second to Ghost Rockstars, and it was still close and scary. And then I just want to say, since I said it earlier, the triple scores I've witnessed. Nelligan got one with Apes, Werewolves, and mine was with Russian Apes, with the help of a base. But
yeah. And I mean, in March Smashness 2020, the first game of the final match, they got a triple score as well, thanks to one of the Mounties bases.
That's what happened. That's how I did it. Yeah.
Great White North.
Oh, that's how you did it.
That's how I did it with Russians.
Gotcha. Elves are on here because elves give movement, help you spread out your power footprint a little bit, and also Traveling Elf is a mini modifier that Cyberback can put on himself, or Baboon can play from your hand. And Rulers of the Cosmos, obviously, they're the newest and shiniest minion modifier faction on the block. They're going to do well with apes. Any other thoughts about Cyborg Apes before we proceed on to number 80?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, number 80 is the Ultimates.
Finally, another Marvel.
Yeah, I believe this is our fifth Marvel faction. One of two in B tier. Let's talk about Ultimates. Somebody tell me about Ultimates. Why are they at 80?
Well, I'm a big proponent of them. Ultimates, notoriously picking them a lot in tournament. I think they're really strong. Honestly, the only thing I think is holding them back is really their antagonism is lacking, and then a little bit of that problem with a lot of cards doing the same thing, and of course Blue Marvel being kind of meh, kind of like Furious George, but like I also think they can be really strong. So
I think Blue Marvel is a lot stronger than Furious George.
It's a little better, I'd say.
Ultimates, I think they really want have synergy. They really want other partners with movement, because especially like Blue Marvel really needs multiple ways to move in a turn. Now that's just looking at them on surface level. They are a very versatile, good, kind of a jack of all trades faction to me. Lots of movement. They've got, I put ×2 Outbreak and ×1 Field Trip. They can play an extra minion on a base without any of your other minions, and they can. You can put cards on the bottom of your deck and draw that many +1. So they've got good draw options. They've got extra minion plays. They've got lots and lots of movement options
and power.
As we've said, kind of to the point of redundancy in a lot of cases. They've got before scoring movement, and they don't have that many weaknesses. I mean, I was being really picky here. Blue Marvel is just, there are almost always better minions to play than Blue Marvel, and their one antagonistic card is a carried away copy.
Yeah. And usually
lift and carry even.
And it's hard to want to use it on an opponent a lot, but it's an option.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. They have done well in tournaments. I think we originally had them a little bit higher because they did really well last year. But then I think we also concluded that probably had to do with the fact that due to the base rules, their home base, Exospace, was showing up in a lot of games. And they love Exospace. Exospace is a crazy base for movement factions. When you take that away, they become a little bit more average.
Yeah. I picked them 3 times the year I won, and 2 of the games I won with them, I soloed Exospace. So It definitely
there you
was a
go.
huge thing. But another weakness I don't think we said was they can back up on action plays, which can hurt, but
Yeah.
because it's just a lot of standard actions and they have no extra action plays, so it can hold up your hand a bit. But they, as like a support movement, they're just so good because they have draw, extra plays, 3 minions with talent move. Captain Marvel's really crazy, and if you can save Captain Marvel or even Spectrum with, what's the special's name? I always forget. Scramble.
Scramble, yes,
Yeah.
there we go.
If you can save Captain Marvel with Scramble, it feels like so much pressure for the opponent. But I've even used it on Spectrum, just having another talent move, because then a Chavez is easier to use. So.
Yeah, America Chavez. We haven't talked about her yet, but
definitely one of their stronger cards.
yeah, she can get very big. I was looking just last night at a game I did of Magical Girls Ultimates versus Explorer Princesses, and America Chavez facilitated a double score just because she got so big from all the movement that was happening at one point.
I think something that's really funny with her that isn't talked about a lot is that she can trigger off of opponents moving to or from as well.
Yes.
So like if you have sumo wrestlers, body slam away, or like bear cavalry might be better for that in the modern day. But like that's really funny niche that is just there for some reason.
Right. Yeah, there was so much going on with Marvel testing. Maybe that was intentional, maybe it wasn't. But anyway, it's there. So
it's there.
Yeah, Magical Girls, I mentioned them already. I believe it was Blackjack several years ago in a Whirlpool tournament. Beat my Kung Fu sumo wrestlers with Magical Girl Ultimates because he was able to get Captain Marvel back into play over and over and over again.
Oh, yeah.
And basically just, sumos counter antagonistic movement, but all their other movement that they do, Ultimates can just immediately undo it because they've got so much movement options. So they can't really be pushed around. They do well with tornadoes. I lost to Hot Apple Cereal last year with... he was playing Tornado Ultimates, and I was Knight Clerics before Clerics were reworked, I should add. But yeah, they're just a very good all-around versatile partner. Kree were briefly on this list, and I decided I wanted to get a little more diversity in the partner options, but Kree Ultimates, I know it's thematically strange for those of you who care about Marvel stuff, but they actually go very well together because Kree provide those extra actions that Ultimates want, and Ultimates give them a lot more ways to spread out so they don't just have to commit on one base. Obviously, they're countered by the 3 classic movement counter factions, Bear Cavalry, Voyagers, and Sheep. That's about all I have left to say about them. Sonus, you have any other thoughts, Berryl?
I mean, they're a little difficult for me. They kind of flown under my radar because even compared to some of the lower tier movement factions like Sheep we talked about last time, I don't really see what Ultimates are doing that's different from them. Like, I don't really see what their niche is. Like, if you wanted the before scoring movement, you've got like Explorers for that. If you wanted the mass movement, you can do Sheep or Tornadoes for any of that stuff. Like, there's not a lot that they in particular do, like, especially with Category 5 for Tornadoes now. But they do all of the movement things well enough, probably.
I'd say what makes them stand out is they're the closest to like a movement support, in my opinion. Because of what I said earlier, they have extra minion plays in a movement faction, which you don't see hardly ever. They have good draw for a movement faction, and then good power gain for a movement faction. So
yeah, I can see that.
It's just they don't have the antagonism, really, which ends up hurting.
Yeah. That one copy of Lift and Carry can certainly feel like it's doing overtime sometimes. But...
And then just Chavez is pretty important as a setup minion, so they can be countered and easy to destroy, so that can be a problem for them too if the opponent can just remove Chavez.
Yeah, I didn't want to put ninjas on the counter list because goodness knows we've seen them already. But yes, if you've got destruction of power 3 or less, that really hurts their setup a lot, as it does many factions. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on out of the 80s to number 79. Also, our first Munchkin faction, which is the Halflings. The one Munchkin faction that wasn't really changed at all is at the bottom of the Munchkin list now. So let's talk about that.
This one's pretty much still hard for anyone to believe, but it's just we have years and years of data where they just lose almost always, and it's hard to understand still because they have a lot of good cards. But I think we have to switch our play style with them and play them in that swarm support style, meaning helping another faction have minion plays, not necessarily pairing them with the swarm. Because what's hurting them is no power boost. They have 100 cards playing another minion, but all of their individual bodies are tiny, and they're not boosting it. So it feels like if you rotate them in as a type of support, we might see more success. But it's just like I'm playing 4 or 5 cards, and I'm just at 10 power, 12 power.
Yeah. My experience with them is I often have more extra minion plays than I know what to do with, which is crazy. But yeah, 14 out of 20 of their cards play extra minions. All of their minions play extra minions, and four of their actions do. They have, as far as their actions go, the ones that don't play extra minions give them recursion. They have a before scoring special. They've got protection. They've got 2 copies of Lunch Run. Which is insane. If you can just dump a bunch of minions and then you just keep drawing, your hand ends up bigger than it was when you started sometimes.
Yeah.
And they do really well at playing from behind. Like, they eat come at me strategies for breakfast.
Yeah.
But yeah, like Sonus said, they have no plus power. They're like one of 9 factions in the game that has no way by themselves to boost their own power. So they are entirely playing, 6 of their minions are 7 of their minions are power 2. That's not a lot to work with. They have no antagonism. The only way they can deal with a frustrating opponent is to break the base they're on, which they can have a hard time with sometimes. And again, as with most factions in B tier, they need to play their cards in exactly the right order. They can do some pretty crazy 0 power to break strategies, but you have to start with your lowest power minion and work your way up, basically. Quarterling into Halfling, into Pestling, into, maybe a partner minion, and then Shire Marshal may have kicked that whole thing off from a different base with his talent. I've found that they do really well if there's a lot of low breakpoint bases, because then they don't have to try as hard. Yeah, you get an average or higher base, and all of a sudden they're going to have some trouble.
Yeah. It's funny, Ludicrousness and I were playing a game a little while ago. I was playing Halflings, and I passed my first turn outright, like, just drew 2 cards, didn't play anything. And he was like, oh, great. But then he said, oh, you're playing Halflings. That doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that is kind of the advantage that they have, is that you can just not do anything until you are ready to do things. And that is really valuable in high level play, especially where managing your power on a base on a per turn basis, like making sure you don't leave too much out to be taken advantage of. That's a real nice thing that Halflings provide, is not having to worry about that, because you can just hoard your cards instead.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Up until you hit that cap of 10 cards, and then unless you're playing with thieves and you can increase your hand size, you're going to have a hard time perhaps figuring out what you need to discard. Yeah, as far as their partners go, I mean, Pearl and the Images is probably the most obvious one here. Also, lots of small minions. Emphasis on playing minions of power 2. Plus power, significantly. It takes a lot of pressure off of Halflings when you've got Ruby, who can just give everybody plus power. Elves, and I can't wait until we talk about elves and talk about how they are not the same as Pearl and the Images. They have not been.
No, they are not.
They have not been replaced by Pearl. They have their own niche that Pearl cannot fill, even though there's some similarities. This is one instance of Elf Help Guru being very useful, because Elf Help Guru can make your opponent stronger so that the Halflings can actually play the cards that they want to. Like, if your opponent has more power than you here, play an extra minion. You can kind of artificially inflate some numbers there to make that happen. Mm-hmm. Bandit, at one point during Marvel testing, he did what he called the Week of Halflings, where he tested every Marvel faction with Halflings like consecutively. He thought the lead playtester at the time was about to kill him, but yeah, Halflings go well with Avengers and all the other Marvel factions, allegedly. They like having big bodies to play with their uncapped extra minion plays. And Avengers, princesses, slashers, action heroes, they love having extra minion plays to use. So ninjas I put on here because of Invisible Ninja, and
good with Pestling.
Yes, good with Pestling. Ninjas give them some antagonism. They give ninjas Swarm. They add an extra special that you can play alongside the ninja specials before base scores.
Ninjas also double down on the don't play anything until you're breaking base.
Right. Except Halflings don't make that awful, Ninjas just can't play anything before base scores. Halflings can facilitate that a little bit. Mega Troopers, I believe this is another combo of yours, Sonus, that you liked before Mega Troopers were reworked even.
Yeah, it was nice because the Titan from Mega Troopers liked all the bodies for the plus power.
Yeah, and I'm sure that combo's even better now.
Yeah, it's gotta be.
For sure.
Elder Things is on this list. This is a classic. One thing we haven't talked about is their special and one of their actions. They've got Rude Awakening, which you reveal your hand, you play every single minion in your hand, with the caveat that all their abilities are canceled. So you're just dumping flat power onto a base. And then they've got Last Call, which is their before scoring special. You can play one minion on a base before it scores, again, canceling its ability. Elder Things like that because Eldest Thing has a self-destructive unplayability, and if that's canceled when you play it, you just get free 10 power. Elder Things, Halflings, I think our consensus is that they are kind of swingy in this day and age. They can, kind of like with Halflings in general, you can drop mega bombs everywhere and just win, or you're gonna struggle depending on how your draw goes. But it's a fun combo to try, just experiment with a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're not listed here, but a couple others I quite like. I like them with teens a lot because of Pestling and teens having plus power. And I quite like it with Wraiths as well for Pestling, but also because Halflings are bringing recursion to get back your Ellen and such. So it just can go pretty crazy.
Yeah.
If Ludicrousness were here, he would say ignoble halflings.
He would say that, wouldn't he? Yes. Another good one. Yeah, they go well with a lot of things. They like we said, swarm support. They have a lot of swarm themselves, but they're better suited these days helping someone else swarm instead, or leaning into another faction's swarm potential. Their counters are all, I mean, the ones that I have here all have an emphasis on lowering power, except for princesses, and that's because princesses can just smite 7 of their minions with their relatively weak destruction options. But dragons, tricksters, killer plants, mermaids, slashers, all of these have power reduction. I think tricksters have power reduction, right? Or maybe I picked tricksters because they're just anti-swarm.
But you could block the path for sure, or
you could block the path.
Leprechaun would be annoying.
Yes.
Yeah.
Even the Titan.
Right. But yeah, lots of if they have any power reduction at all, I mean, you're really going to struggle unless you've got some way to counteract that with your partner. Well, Sonus, it's funny that you brought up teens because number 78 is in fact the teens. So talk to me about the teens, Sonus.
I don't believe this number. Every time I've played them, I'm like, this faction is busted. Unfortunately, I have to prove it. So it's they just when you get things in the right order, it's just like so much starts popping off. And it feels really good, and the synergy with 3 power minions, there's so many good 3 power minions lately, and they have some really broken cards around that with like New Kid to search your deck for a 3 and just play it, or Strange Science, just play an extra 3 from your discard pile. It gets pretty wild if you can get, but they are very prone to order issues because of looking for specific names. And I think it's just kind of a headache to play them sometimes, and so it's just easier to avoid.
Yeah. I like teens. I've had pretty good games every time I've played them, for the most part. I tried them with Changer Bots, and that went okay. It wasn't a fun game necessarily, but yeah.
I can see Changer Bots working for Huffies.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Huffy was a big appeal there, but yeah, I mean, then you're dealing with Changer Bots issues.
Yeah.
So yeah, teens, I mean, their strength is, to me, they are the epitome of boomer bust and smash up, and Quality Mojo is on Sonus' side on this. He originally rated teens very, very highly, and then when we gave it some time, and I put them in low A, high B, mid B, and I think Mojo and Sonus are still like, maybe they could be higher, but it is hard to argue with the stats. And that's, if they don't explode, they just whiff completely. A lot of times it feels like.
They implode instead.
They implode, yeah. What a great metaphor for being a teenager. Either exploding or imploding. Yeah, I mean, they've got a very interesting gameplay hook. They've got 2 copies of 5 different minions, and all of those minions have some very powerful effects. You do have to sequence them correctly, but they're powerful effects. They're varied effects, so you can. And so as you were saying this the other day, there's a lot of unpredictability that you have when you play as teens, which is also fitting for teenagers. You can move very suddenly or drop a lot of power very suddenly or play an extra action out of nowhere and then add even more power or an extra minion. They have a lot of very powerful cards. They're just completely hamstrung sometimes by their hyperfixation on printed power 3. It has to be exactly 3. It's not less than 3. It's not more than 3. It has to be 3. So you give them a partner that goes really well with 3s, and they do extremely well. I was trying to think. I'm on my partners list. I knew there was somebody obvious I was missing. They go well with grannies, great grandma teen, and the teens. Very explosive. But I mean, a lot of these partners here have an emphasis on 3s as well. Big Hero 6, mostly 3s. Ghosts have a lot of 3s. Mages, a lot of 3s. Wizards, I mean, Chrono Mage, but they've also got draw and a lot more consistency to help patch the teen issues. Time Travelers, you can play the teens over and over again and double up on some effects. Killer Plants, post-rework, lots of 3s. Yeah. So and you've got Sprout to get the exact teen that you want. Grow a teen. So some very, very good options.
I might have said it during Shield, but I love Shield teens. As far as just liking a Shield combo is nice.
Yeah, that's why Shield isn't on the list, because I think I put teens on that list, way back at number 106. But yeah, I would be okay being wrong about teens. I think they could be higher too. I need to see the proof.
Yeah.
Sonus.
The headache. Yeah.
Yes.
I think one of their less obvious weaknesses is the fact that they don't have anything that's bigger than a printed 3. Like, there have been a lot of situations in games over the years where I just have to use my 4s and 5s for one turn just for their printed power as part of a burst.
Yeah.
And teens don't have that desperation option. And that can actually backfire on them quite a bit.
Right. One of their big counters is the Nightmare Before Christmas. Ghostly Presence completely walls them. And they have no action destruction either. So if you're opponent,
do they have any antagonism at all?
They don't.
I don't know if they do.
They don't.
Protection.
Nightmare Before Christmas, Ghostly Presence. You might as well just forget about that base, because you're never going to be able to play on it with the teens.
Yep. At least Ghostly Presence, by definition, you have a minion there.
That's true. But a lot of times, teens don't want their minions on a base by themselves. They need those minions together to get their effects.
Yes.
Granted, they have some movement, so they could pivot over there if they needed to. But
I was going to
mention, it makes it very hard.
Since you brought up movement, I actually think Slacker's not talked about it. It's actually really strong to just move good. 2 of your minions to other bases. Like, that is huge. So should maybe work with good movement partners. I just haven't tried it. So.
Right. Tornado Teen Nados. Who wants to play that one? Slashers, pretty thematically counter teens. Kung Fu Fighters, anything that can destroy. Again, 3 or less. Teens are going to have a hard time with that. Dragons, Wyvern, and just the amount of control they have. Again, and dragons can set up traps. Teens just kind of have to play on the base. They can't do anything about the VP penalties or the negative power. Same with tricksters. They got no way to contest whatever tricksters are setting up. They just got to deal with it.
They have some decent options against destruction and such with their protection card, Babysitter, as well as multiple ways to recur their minions from the discard, either to the deck, to their hand, or just play it straight from the deck. So destruction's actually not too bad. I mean, coming from I lost a Teen Grannies as Kung Fu ponies, mythic horses, I should say, and the destruction really wasn't slowing them down much because of just all those options.
Right. Well, and of course, grannies have recursion.
Yeah,
they've got protection. So you double down on that, and a lot of these become less of an issue for sure. But I think Babysitter by itself, even though that was like the one and only teens card revealed for a long time.
We did meme on it for a while.
Yeah, we did. The card that says nothing about the faction that's in, other than that it's a teenager. That's a good card to have. I don't think it protects the minion that it's played on. It's just other minions on the base.
It does protect that minion too. It's just your minions here cannot be affected by abilities.
Okay.
Other players.
Right. Okay, so that's better than I was remembering. But yeah. Okay. Well, we're going to go ahead and talk about our last faction for the day, number 77, which is the Steampunks. Our second oldest faction on the list, besides pirates. So let's talk. Who wants to talk about Steampunks?
Yeah, I think Yeah, I think steampunks are one where players that are new to the game are going to see their big flashy cards and think steampunks are really strong. And I think we're just beating the dead horse of B tier of draw order dependency. If you see they're good cards, they're great. And if you don't, they're not great. I think steampunks in particular have the meme where playing them is playing steampunk roulette, where if you see mechanic and rotary slug thrower and agromotive early, you win, and if you don't, you lose.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the three wishes.
Yeah.
If you play agromotive 3 times, and 2 of those with a mechanic, you're probably going to win the game.
Yeah.
If you don't, you're probably going to lose. And that's, that's assuming steampunks are leading the charge. They can play support as well. They're another good all-around faction. I'd kind of lump them in the same category as ultimates in that respect. They have lots of talent movement, 2 copies of Zeppelin, which can move your minion hither or thither. They've got, I think, Captain Ahab is one of like two power minions that has talent movement besides Dudley in the Mounties.
Do we count Huffy?
Huffy's got some. Huffy's a 3 power minion. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, she got 4 copies though.
Yeah, it's not common. Is my point. And Captain Ahab did it first. But yeah, they are so draw order dependent. Like if you get a mechanic early and then you don't see agromotive or rotary slug thrower, and for those of you who don't know, agromotive it predates the kaiju actions with power in that you play it on a base, and if you have a minion there, you have +5 power. It's like a boss minion by itself.
Which is good because their own leader is...
Yeah. So you got 2 blank 5s. It's wonderful. For 10, that's Elder Things. Rotary Slug Thrower is all of your minions here have +2 power. So with Swarm factions, that's insane. The old how much power can you get on Factory 436, 1337 theory craftings a lot of times revolve around Rotary Slug Thrower and robots. Just dumping power there. But yeah, Steam Queen, their queen minion... leaves a lot to be desired. Now, you see this list of counters. If Steam Queen is in play, all those counters mean next to nothing. Kaiju and Dragons and Tornadoes can still destroy a base, which destroys actions, but Truckers can't steal, Fairies can't destroy. She protects actions on bases. That is her whole deal. Now, the reason we talk about her being blank is because there are so many matchups where that just doesn't matter. Or even if it does matter, she's 5 power. So that's a lot of power you're just leaving sitting on a base for someone. It's like, okay, I won't destroy your actions. I'll just play minions and break the base and get rid of her that way. It's a good idea in theory. It has not. It's definitely early faction syndrome at play here. It is not the direction the game went, with emphasis on destroying or otherwise messing with actions in a big way.
This was another weird faction because... kind of like halflings, for years they were one of the best factions before the list grew, and so admitting that they went down took some time, but lacking antagonism overall wasn't helping them. The weaknesses there, Steam Queen and Steam Man, don't feel that great, and then you have to get the boomer bust like you said. So it's weird to have them down here, but it just kind of makes sense lately.
Yeah. Now, that said, I mean, we're not getting too far away from the midpoint of the tier list. So they're comparatively speaking, they are just below average, really.
Yeah.
Especially, I mean, we're about the rest of B tier. All of these factions were contentious for whether or not they needed to be an A or B. And when this tier list was a little more specific, and I had B+ and A-, there was a lot of overlap there as well. So, like I've said it before, and I'll say it again. All of these factions are competitive. They have a few more dependencies and quirks that hold them back compared to everything above them, but you will have fun, I think, playing any of these factions going forward.
Oh yeah, of course.
And they have a clear game plan, and they set out what they want to do, and if they accomplish it, you're gonna do well. Especially like from now that we're in the 70s, from the 70s onwards, the stakes just get higher because the factions just keep getting better. We're going to continue to have, for at least a little bit longer, factions that I'm sure will surprise people based on their placement. And then it's going to be pure gas from there on out.
Yeah.
That is all we will talk about today as far as factions. Do you guys have any other thoughts before we wrap up?
I just wanted to call one partner out that I found recently, and is Skeletons. Still no antagonism really between the two, but Skeletons bring some really good play on base actions. They bring Swarm. So when you bring in Rotary Slug Thrower plus the play on base actions from Skeletons, plus the Swarm style from Skeletons, you can do some really big plays. Mechanic can recur the Skeleton actions too, and then using like Zeppelin to move your Lord of Bones around just felt so strong as well. So it's just,
oh yeah,
it's a nice combo.
Mm-hmm.
And something,
I can definitely see that.
I've alluded to it in the strengths column, but we've talked about Mechanic, whose whole deal is play a base modifier from your discard pile as an extra action, and that's a great ability. But they've also got 2 copies of Scrap Diving, which lets you put any action from your discard pile into your hand. So it's a poor man's Mechanic in some cases, where if you really need aggro motive back in play again, you can just grab it and play it next turn. But yeah, I mean, it can grab any action. Standard, minion modifier, base modifier. So some of the skeleton standard actions, like place them down or dig them up.
Yeah, using them on
those again.
Place them down. Scrap Diving, place them down was really good. Because, you get the Mechanic back with that.
Yeah.
And
And you're just pulling all sorts of cards out of your discard pile at that point. So, I can see that definitely. Perhaps it will surprise no one that we are not going to get to skeletons for a while on this list. Any other thoughts about any of these factions or anything before we wrap up?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, in this case, we will put a pin in it here, and our listeners can enjoy this, and then we'll get to number 76 here, hopefully before too long. So, all right. Thank you both.
All right.
See you later.